What's up? This is Matt Hill. This is the Roots of Circle Radio. I haven't put a recording up in a while, but I have been making some recordings, getting ready to edit and put out there. But we're coming up close to the 4th of July. I believe it's in 3 or 4 days, something like that. Been seeing on Facebook a lot, things pertaining to, America, America the beautiful, America the great, land of the free, home of the brave, right? Well, let's look at Independence Day. It was the day the Declaration of Independence was signed. It was what kicked off the war. We weren't independent then. That was just what kicked the war off. This is our grievances. This is what we're fighting for. It was the Constitution that capped off the end of the war. It was the Declaration of Independence that kicked the war off. It's not the day we gained independence. It's the day we declared independence. So, strictly a white holiday, and I'm going to tell you why. You know, African Americans are I don't think they should be don't I'm not saying, oh man, you're black, you shouldn't be popping firecrackers on the 4th of July. But us as whites as well shouldn't be satisfied with Independence Day celebrating a land of the free when not all our people are free. The African Americans, that they were fighting for the things that were listed in the Declaration of Independence well before 1776. We're talking back, 1553 or something like that, when the first slave ships rolled upon American shores. I read in a GED book in prison that African Americans beat the Pilgrims over here. We leave that kind of stuff out of our history books. That some of the first people besides the Native Americans that set foot on this land were African Americans. We don't, are we so small-minded? Let's take the Thanksgiving dinner. For instance, I wrote about this a lot. The white men that come here, they were slave owners. They well documented that the slaves were here before pilgrims. So that first Thanksgiving dinner, they talk about the tensions between the Native Americans and the Europeans that come here and colonize this land. But they still sat down and ate supper together. Where was the African American? Where was what we call the Negro included in that? We know they were here. Where were they? Well, they weren't sitting at that table of brotherhood eating dinner, no matter how high the tensions between the Native American and the European Americans were. They weren't included in the story, but we know they're there. So where were they? You know what I mean? That tells you they was out there growing that maize. They was out there growing that corn. They was out there cooking that supper for the white man. It was the white man's supper, not the Native American supper. The Native American come and brought things to it, but if it was the white man's table, you can bet your ass an African American was serving that food, because that's just how it was in this country for 400 years. So what's Independence Day for an African American? You know what I mean? It's where's their sovereignty? They're still not even a sovereign people. Not only are they not allowed their sovereignty, which is a 100% must for the African American people, they can never recover from the breath of slavery without sovereignty. White folks can't cure the illness that they poured upon the African American people. The white man can't cure the disease that they spread. Our tools and our assets can, but they have to be handed over to the African American sovereign nation in order to do so. We must hand them our tools the same way we did the Native Americans. You know what I mean? We showed them these are our tools of white privilege. These are how we set our schools up. But we're not going to tell you what to teach. These are here's the money and here's the assets, here's the vote, here's this, here's that, here's our white privilege. Use it at your will. Here's our toolbox of liberty. We got to do the same thing with the African Americans. See, we want to go into their communities and try to fix things ourselves. Well, the problem with the white man, we're still the greedy white people we were that enslaved these people. We don't do nothing for them that we don't profit off of first, be it food stamps, be it the healthcare system, be it us cleaning up the neighborhoods, stopping crime in the neighborhoods. No, we create the crime in the neighborhoods so we can have a reason to hire more police. to build these tanks, to build these weapons of destruction we send into these African American neighborhoods that we don't put in our white media. So, African Americans right now, they're at 52% of DOC population. That's the lowest all time in the history of our Department of Corrections in this United States. More so, they run between 70 and 90% of the prison population, closer to 90 for the most part of the time, Yet they're only 13% of the population. So, they are the mass oppressed. When you're well over half the prison population, that's the enslaved. Mass incarceration is just slavery. Look at the 13th Amendment. All it did was legalize slavery. It socialized slavery. It turned it over into the state's hands. Slavery is abolished except for due punishment of a crime. You know what I mean? So you make slavery legal for those who've been duly convicted of a crime. Then you make 90% plus of the prison population African American. All we did was socialize slavery. So let us remember, we call it the Jewish Holocaust over there in Europe, but it wasn't all Jews, was it? No, it was 50 to 90% Jews, just like it's 50 to 90% African Americans in our ghettos, in our concentration camps here. So it's what's put the same scales adjust to look upon that. It wasn't predominantly all Jew over there. It was 50 to 90, just the same numbers, almost represent the same. You know what I mean? There was homosexuals, there was Russians, there was all kinds of people in the concentration camps and in the ghettos in Germany and the surrounding areas, but it was predominantly Jewish. So we know it as the Jewish Holocaust. Well, our prison system and our ghetto system here, which is pretty much the same as that of Hitler's day, is the same numbers represent the African Americans. They're the minority, yet they're a mass majority who is incarcerated. So it's truth is truth. So what's Independence Day for them? If the white man represent his numbers are at the last census 68% of the U.S. population, yet only make up for like 7 to 10% of the prison population, and that's 2020 numbers. Yet the African Americans are 13% of the population, yet make up for 52% of the prison population on the same numbers. You know what I mean? And that's really an unjust figure to give, because the years before that they're closer to 70 to 90%. So that's just 1 year they're at 52%. But still, even at 52%, that is over half of the prison population, made up by 13% of the U.S. population. Almost just a little over a tenth of the U.S. population makes up for well over half of the prison population. Well, our prison population are those who are enslaved. You know what I mean? Punishment of crime is you get paid. The DOC gets paid for every body laying in those prison racks. So if 50 to 90% of the prison racks are filled with African Americans, they're slaves. There's money being made off their pains and their oppression. So we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among those are the rights to life, liberty, and one's pursuit of happiness. Can an African American say that they are afforded life? They have the highest suicide rate per capita in the world. You know what I mean? For crack cocaine, they had the lowest. Can they say that they have liberty? Whether we talk about them, like Dr. King said, about his 20 million, the vast majority of his 20 million Negro brothers and sisters smothering in an airtight cage of poverty in the midst of an affluent society. Well, what all are we affluent with? Not only are us white folks affluent with money and opportunity, we're affluent with liberty. We don't have to worry about it. There's something vastly wrong with those numbers. 68% of the population makes up for less than 10% of the prison population, yet around 10% of the U.S. population makes up for 52% of the prison population. Are they receiving the same justice? You know, do we say they're criminals genetically? I mean, how do we justify that? How do we justify that? Well, the point that we have to ask that question, well, why are those numbers so high? Tells us that a black life doesn't matter because we haven't looked into it deep enough to see why those numbers are like that. You know, poverty is the key, of course, but where's that poverty arise from? What methods do we use to keep that airtight cage sealed? How do we keep that poverty sealed in there? When you got note that Martin Luther King Jr. said, an airtight cage of poverty in the midst of an affluence. It's like a bubble. You know, you take a bubble and press it down of this sea of wealth, and you just got this pocket of poverty. Yet all this, you got the wealthiest nation in the world, yet the African Americans hold 0.5% of that wealth. That's a lot of poverty, people. So when you press that down in there, that's, you know, just like the pressure of the sea. The deeper you go, the more pressure. Well, we're the wealthiest nation in the world. We're the deepest banks and pockets in the world. So that airtight cage of poverty is only, you know, we're talking 13, 14% of the U.S. population. As you go deeper with it, and yet it doesn't collapse. That sucker is sealed airtight. Well, what's that airtight seal? You know, there's many layers and aspects to it. It takes to keep that much wealth, the wealthiest nation in the world, yet to keep a small portion of the people down to 0.5% of the wealth. And we're talking hard-working people. When we hear the word hustle, we think of African Americans. You know, we hear the word game, we think of African Americans. Why don't we look deeper into that airtight cage? What is keeping that much wealth out of it? You know, we got like 13 trillion or something, I believe, is our gross domestic product or something. $13 trillion. You know, we spend almost $1 trillion a year just in military spending. Yet their wealth has changed none. They hold the same 0.5% of the wealth as they did in the 1860s when they were enslaved people, or at the end of slavery at least. That is I don't know any other vessel that could be that airtight that you could put to the bottom of the sea for, you know, 1860, 40 years, the 1900, 140, 161 years. 161 years and not one drop of water, not one molecule of air seep into that airtight cage. That is by design, people. These are hardworking people. You know, so why don't we peel those layers and see what keeps that airtight cage so tight? We've made this land of the free only free to those who have money in their pockets. Freedom isn't free in the land of the free, you see. So when you own 0.5% of the wealth, you get 90% of the felony crimes put upon your back. So, you know, there's crack cocaine. There's many, many layers to it. I'm trying to keep this fairly short to keep you interested, but it's something to think about. You know, if a Black Lives Matter, why don't we ask, what's that airtight cage? No other race has that tight of a cage. You know, money pours out of the Latino communities. One of the richest men in the world before I went to prison got his wealth from transferring money from Latinos in America to Mexico, just transferring the money. African Americans are 90% of the blame of the war on drugs is placed upon the backs of the African Americans. Well, we know it's a multi-billion-dollar a year industry, the illicit drug trade is. Yet their wealth moves none. Their wealth moves none. What are we doing? Where's that money? They're just a scapegoat. They're a cat. I don't know what word I'm looking for, but white man controls all the money in this country. That's a known fact. You know what I mean? It's so, you know, like E40 said, we didn't bring in all this dope. We ain't got no planes and boat. In the ghetto, we got a car. So, you know, we didn't bring on all this. So the white man brings all these illicit drugs, these billions of dollars worth of drugs, and they give it to these African Americans. Now they blame the Latino for bringing it in, but anybody with any sense at all knows nothing comes past the white man in this country without their hand in it. That's why we hold all the wealth. We blame the Latino for shipping it in over from Mexico and South America when that's the white man doing it. We put it to these African Americans and we jiggle it out there like a carrot on a stick. Y'all can have some temporary money, but that money never goes to them. We put them out there where they turn these kilos and tons of cocaine into 20 sacks. You take, well, that makes, I don't know what the profit margin is, but it increases vastly when it hits street level, right? So the African Americans get it at the street level. They rake all that cash out of the white society, because if you got 0.5% of the wealth, you ain't the ones buying the drugs, okay? It's this white man buying the drugs. We got the wealth. So there's not billions and billions and billions of dollars for African Americans hold only 0.5% of the wealth to hold. Now, do some of them get on that crack cocaine? Of course, but the vast majority of the sales come from us white people. Just like Snoop Dogg said, I hang out with kidnappers and jackers, I only make money off you crackers. So they get to that street level, and then they turn, I don't know the numbers, but you turn a ton of cocaine into 20 sacks, and all of a sudden you got the black man washing your goddamn coke money for you. Then you turn around and beat him up with sticks and put him in the goddamn penitentiary and take his cash money from him. We're making money twice off it, because that money never gets in that airtight cage of poverty. It floats around there briefly, then boom, the Thug Task Force, the Gang Task Force, the DEA swoops down, and the ATF swoops down on you. Like Too Short said, is it being black or having money my crime, Well, when we've designed an airtight cage of poverty, when we've made a system where we have absolutely made it where an African American shouldn't have a dollar, that we kept it for 160 years, at 0.5% of the wealth, we know a black man is not supposed to have money. So if we see a black man with money, like Too Short said, I bought this Benz, thought it'd give me some respect. I was rolling legit, but they fucking got me fucking face down on the concrete looking for the sack, If we have designed a system where they're not allowed to have money, then it makes it probable cause to make a suspect out of an African American with money. So, it's a way to profile and a way to bootstrap. So, these are some of the things we need to look into and work on. It's a must, and it's something we must do. If a Black Lives Matter, we need to show them that they matter, not by throwing a black fist in the air. We need to show them their lives matter by investigating these gross injustices. We need to give them an Independence Day, something to celebrate, not a Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Yeah, it's nice to celebrate such a gallant soldier of liberty like Martin Luther King Jr. But if Martin Luther King Jr. was like Jesus to ascend from the heavens and look what upon his people, would he say, man, they made a holiday out of my birthday, but my people still hold 0.5% of the wealth? They made a holiday out of my goddamn birthday. They put statues up of me everywhere, but my people are still incarcerated or raped. 52 to 90% of the prison population, yet we're only 14% of the population. They made a mockery of my birthday because they care not about my dream. What are these signs that say Black Lives Matter? Part of my dream, if you didn't understand. Said, I have a dream that one day in this nation, my 4 little children will not be judged by the color of their skin, by the content of their character. Here I see on TV and the NBA and all over the place, people holding up signs that say Black Lives Matter. Y'all couldn't even get that part of it right. I said the vast majority of my 20 million Negro brothers and sisters are suffocating in an airtight cage of poverty in the midst of the affluent society. Look how the white economy has grew. Yet my brothers and sisters hold the same wealth they did as slaves. You made a holiday out of my birthday. Whoop-de-fucking-do. Where's our sovereignty? Where's our reparations? Where's our vote? Where's our justice? Where's our Independence Day? You want to know why we as whites should be taking a knee at Independence Day as well? Because there's been more black soldiers hit the dirt to amend our Constitution to bring liberties to all people than any Marine, any Navy, any Army. Many of them dual soldiers. They fought for their African sovereignty, and they fought overseas in these same wars as well. These are true soldiers. The African Americans are the super soldiers of American liberty. They understand the Declaration of Independence, and they understand the dream, not just Dr. King's dream, but the dream of our white founding fathers as well. Martin Luther King Jr. said in 1963, "My dream's deeply rooted in the American dream." That we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. All works are dedicated to Eric Wright, also known as Eazy-E.